What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Sundown Audio unofficial YouTube channel. My name's Derek, and on this episode of Tech Time Thursday, I'm going to teach you all about how to troubleshoot your car audio amplifier. Alright guys, don't you hate it? You're riding around, you're bumping, bass is beating, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, it stops. No more bass. Boo-hoo. Well, we get a lot of this, a lot of guys calling in for tech support, trying to figure out things, RMA support stuff. So on the heels of my last video talking about the warranty, I figured I would give y'all some tips and tricks how to troubleshoot your own system. So you're riding around bumping, the bass quits working, you can get in, you can check out your amplifier on your own. Because, like I mentioned in that last video about warranty, we get an unbelievable amount of product sent back in here. There's nothing wrong with it. We get amplifiers sent back that still work, subwoofers like this one sent back that still work with nothing wrong with them. So on this episode, it's gonna be all about the amplifiers, how to troubleshoot that. So let's dive in. All right. Most important tool anybody can have is going to be something like this, a simple DMM or digital multimeter, one that can read basic voltage, DC voltage, and preferably impedance. In a situation like we're about to do right here, reading correct impedance isn't so much important as being able to read it at all. We like to use these X-Techs. They're cheap. I believe they run about 40 bucks, and they're very, very reliable. We've had really good luck with these cheap X-Techs around here. They read impedance perfect. Now, as you've seen just now, we had the subwoofer bumping, all of a sudden, everything cuts off. So the first thing I'm gonna do when troubleshooting my amplifier, I'm gonna come around here to the side where we've got our LED lights. So right here, this is where our power and our protect LED lights are at. So I'm gonna first look to see, is my power light on, which this one normally glows blue. Give you a little example. Bam. So first thing I'm gonna notice is my power light is not on. So that tells me part of the issue right there. I've either lost power or I've blown my amplifier, but I'm pretty sure I've lost power of some sort. Now, if you see the back light, that's your protect light. If that's glowing red, that's a whole nother issue. We'll get into that later in the video. All right, so my power light is off. So that means first thing I'm gonna do is come to this side of my amplifier and I'm gonna check out my connections. Number one, I'm gonna make sure that my power, ground, and remote wires are all connected. Nothing's falling out of the amplifier. Now, once I verify that, the next thing I'm gonna do is get my DMM. I'm gonna set it to DC voltage, which is right here. So we got it to read some DC voltage. I'm trying to see if I can prop this up. And then I'm gonna start probing my inputs on this side, my DC input. So I've got my power, remote, and ground. First up, let's check out the power and ground. So ground, power, and there you go. We have 14.8 volts. So I know the amplifier's seeing power. Next, let's check out the remote wire. So still, I'm gonna touch my ground and I'm gonna touch the remote there, and let's see what we read. And we have nothing. So that tells me immediately I have a remote issue. My remote has lost power. Now, a remote issue could be several things. It could be a connection, it could be a break in the wire somewhere, because keep in mind, your remotes typically is gonna run from your head unit all the way back to the back of the vehicle to your amplifiers. If you have some kind of remote distribution for multiple amplifiers, there could be a connection problem there. But we troubleshooted, and just that quick, we found out we had a remote issue. Your remote's not getting the proper power to turn that amplifier on. Now, the other issues, we'll tackle them in a later video. Right now, we're just worrying all about just the amplifier. But say it's not a remote issue, let's check out some others. All right, so this time I created another issue. So I know my ground's working because obviously I created another issue, but we're gonna check it out anyway. So I got my DMM, we're set to DC voltage. And first up, let's check our remote this time. So we got our ground, we got our remote. and bam, we've got 14 volts. So we know our ground and our remote are good. So next, let's check out the power. Hook up our ground, hook up our power, and nothing, not reading any voltage. So that right there tells me my ground's good, my remote's good this time, but I've got an issue on that power input. So the best thing you're gonna wanna do is trace your power wire. A lot of times, fuses can pop and go bad, some kind of connections. Power wires, usually with fuses or distribution blocks or things, people have multiple connections in line. So you're going to follow that wire all the way up to the front of your car, to your rear battery bank, wherever it goes. Check all connections, check all fuses, make sure everything's good. As well as if your amplifier has built-in fuses. This model does not, so we can't check those out. A lot of model amplifiers have onboard fuses. Make sure and pull those, check them out. Even if they look good, sometimes it's good to do a continuity test across that fuse. Make sure there's not a little break in there you can't see. All right, our power supply is screaming a little bit behind me, so bear with me for a little bit. So now let's say we went through tracking down a remote issue, we went through tracking down a power issue, so what about a ground issue? Well, I'm not even gonna go through the whole steps because it's pretty much the same. If we did these tests and we didn't get any kind of signal, because we use the same ground for both. So if we did these tests and didn't get a signal, track down a ground issue, what you're going to do, find another ground in your car. Find some kind of bolt or something, some kind of piece of metal. And then you'll have your power, touch your power here, your remote. Just take your ground, touch to some other physical ground in the car if you need to. And I'll give you a little example. We could pull a ground, like we have extra wires here, pull that over, touch it. You're essentially just gonna check out another ground while touching your power and remote. You get voltage then you know it's a ground issue. Same process as the power. Trace your wire up, check all connections, check your terminals, make sure everything's good and tight. If all else fails, worst case scenario, and I've had to do this one time troubleshooting a car, and it's going to be really hard for me to show you here. So if you're positive, all your connections are good. You're positive on the other end of your wire, all your connections are good. Here's something I've had an issue with, and I'm going to pull this up to try and show you. I had a customer's car a long time ago. They were having a crazy voltage issue. We checked all connections front and back, tested everything out. He was not getting proper voltage to his amplifier, but he had proper voltage here at his terminals. Well, what I ended up having to do was little by little check his wire. So I took my DMM. Now this is a ground, so we'll do it. I basically have my power hooked up, and little by little, I stabbed my wire, came back, checked the wire. And I went front to back like that till I isolated a section where essentially I found the voltage drop across the wire by simply stabbing it with my probes and checking it out. And it turns out he bought some very crappy CCA wire, and it had corroded and oxidized and literally fell apart inside the jacket. So by physically looking at it, checking all connections, everything looked great, but the wire had just completely disintegrated inside the jacket. And it wasn't until I went through and tracked down and stabbed that wire the whole length of the car, which was a very difficult process, but we found out it was that CCA wire giving us an issue. All right, so let's start over from scratch. Say we lose our bass, boom, nothing's playing no more, oh my God. But we come back and we look, and our power light is on. So power light on, always a good sign. We got power, we don't have a protect issue. We know usually our power, ground, or motor working. I'm still gonna check real quick. I'm gonna touch my power and ground. I'm still gonna check voltage. There can be a possible issue of a low voltage scenario where you're kind of teeter-tottering right on that line. Now, most amplifiers and ones like our SCV series right here, they're good down to the low 9-volt range. You never want to play there. But what can happen is you could be sitting at 9.5 volts where the amp is barely on, but as soon as it tries to hit and play and suck some juice, the voltage will drop, and your amplifier will basically cut in and out because of the voltage drop. So still the first thing I'm gonna do when I'm having an issue, even if my power light is on, I'm still gonna go, I'm gonna check my voltage, make sure I got plenty to keep the amplifier on while it's trying to play, and that's not the problem. Next thing, let me get this wire out of the way real quick. Next thing I'm gonna do, I got power, I verified my voltage input, I know that's good. Next thing I'm gonna check is my output. Now, if you got a song playing and you're confident, you're gonna get output. So let me get the head unit set up. I'll show you how to check that real quick. All right, guys, so back to this side of the amplifier. So we've gone over checking our inputs. We made sure our amplifier is on. We've got a light. We have verified our voltage. So next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna check our outputs. So this is our DC voltage input. These are our speaker outputs. One big thing to note is speaker outputs are in AC voltage. So got my DMM here. Right now it's set up in DC, so I'm just gonna select real quick, change that over to AC. Let's set that down, and then we're gonna give it a quick probe. If I can get these right in my hand. My negative is on the bottom, positive on the top. And let's see, and there we go. See, we're getting some AC voltage output, and I'm playing music on my head unit. So this music is transient. It's not a solid tone. You can do it with the tone if you want to, play any kind of music, but we're basically looking for some kind of AC voltage output here. All right, so now that we got that, we've got it verified, we have some AC voltage output, similar to what we did with our power and grounds and trying to troubleshoot them and following them up to our source. Well, we're gonna follow this output, follow our speaker wires, follow it all the way around, and we're not connected. So there's our problem. Now, let's go ahead and fast forward. Say it is connected. Okay, now, depending on how you got your stuff set up, again, you could have your wires, you could be going to your enclosure, it has some connections there. So if it's going to some kind of bolts or some kind of connector on the outside enclosure, check that out. You're probably gonna have to pull a subwoofer, check those connections on the inside. You can do the same way I just showed you to check the AC output on your amplifier, check the connections where you're going to the outside of your box. If everything seems fine, pull a subwoofer, check the connections on the inside of the box. Similar to the story I just told you about the CCA wire and falling apart and having some issues, I've seen the same things on some of the terminals in subwoofer enclosures. So make sure and check those things, see if there's any kind of issues, any kind of corrosion or anything on them, something that's gonna stop a good connection. Now, say it's connected. Say everything seems good. You can even check for that AC voltage right here at your terminals. Then what do? All right, so we verified, followed our speaker wire. We knew it was hooked up. We checked it. We had voltage here at the speaker output. So this is where your DMM is going to come back into play. But this time, we're not checking for voltage anymore. This time, we're going to go for impedance. So I'm going to turn my DMM on. I've got it set to read the impedance here, or resistance, whatever you want to call it. And you're simply going to check out your terminals. So for ease of doing this one-handed, we're going to clip our ground in there. Make sure we can read this good. Let's get up here and touch. And oh no, we are reading 0 resistance, open lead. So bam, we have found our problem. It's with our subwoofer at the voice coil. All right, guys, so next up, what are we gonna check? So we checked out everything, showed you how to go over troubleshooting the power input, the power output, all the way down to checking out to make sure your subwoofer, if that's the issue or not. So I don't want to have to purposely short circuit the amp or do anything that's going to set in to protect. So for this section of the video, bear with me a little bit. We're going to pretend that red protect light is on. All right. So pretending with me, our protect light is on. What's the first thing that we should do? Very simple. We're going to kill the remote power to the amplifier. So be that whether you have some kind of switch on your remote or whether your head unit simply turns it on and off. We'll dash over here real quick to our head unit. We're going to turn it off, kill the signal to tell your amplifier to turn on, give it a second so it's off. we're gonna turn our head unit back on, or our remote switch, however you have your setup done. We're gonna come over, we're gonna see if it turns back on. Now, if it does, voila. So say that does cut our amp back on. Now that doesn't tell us what the issue was that set the amplifier and protect. That'll be a whole nother video, whole nother slew of issues that could happen to set an amplifier and protect, especially in a short-term protect issue. But for now, let's say that didn't fix it. Let's say you turned your switch, your head unit, whatever it is, you've killed the remote, you've turned it back on, your amp goes immediately straight back into protect. So here's where the two problems are gonna lie. You either have a problem on your signal input that's shorting out, sending your amplifier and protect, or you have a problem on your output, which immediately means there's some kind of short circuit on your speaker wires or subwoofer. Now you can blow a subwoofer coil, explode it, and that can cause a short circuit issue. Any kind of short circuit issue that essentially grounds out your outputs, your power and your ground together, should immediately send an amplifier and protect. So how do we check those out? Real simple. Turn your amplifier off, turn the remote off. We're gonna disconnect the RCAs completely, remove them out of the amplifier. We're then gonna go over here, and I don't wanna have to go through the whole process here, but bear with me. We're going to unscrew and remove our speaker wires. So we know for a fact there's no speaker wires hooked up. They can be shorted out. The RCAs are not hooked up. They can be shortened out. We're then gonna turn power back on, cross our fingers. All right, guys, so one last thing I'm gonna show you to check to troubleshoot your amplifier. So we've already went through the DC power input, checking voltage, check for power, ground, remote. We went through the output, checking the speaker wires, making sure you have the AC voltage output. We went through checking, tracing all the way to your subwoofer, checking with your DMM, checking the impedance on your subwoofer, making sure it's not the issue. So let's go to the other side. Say all that stuff checks out. We got our power light, everything's on, but we still seem to just not be getting any sound output from the amplifier. So one last thing could be, we're gonna check out, are gonna be the RCAs. Now, again, you can check the RCAs, you can follow the wires just like following any other wires, but real quick, to do a test here, something I think a lot of people don't know you can do, is you can check it with your DMM. So I've set my head unit up. I just got it playing a 40 hertz little tone. Now this tone goes in and out, so the volume doesn't say consistent, but I've got it set on repeat. Bear with me a little bit. I'm gonna try and lean this mic up while I show you this. So here we got our RCAs, we got our DMM, and you can actually read the output coming from your head unit. So let me try and get this all focused real easily here. All right, so here we go. So if y'all don't know, the outside of your case here is ground. So I'm going to touch my ground there, and that center pin is your power. So real simple, I'm gonna touch that and give it a second. My track is resetting, and then bam. You can see the music as it's playing, turning my voltage up and down, confirming that I do have a signal coming out of this RCA. All right, guys, so hopefully by now, after checking all these things out, your DC voltage input, verifying you got that, verifying your output, your signal on this side, everything, hopefully by now you figured it out. You found out whether you have some other underlying problem, whether it's an amplifier problem. Typically, that protect light's a pretty good thing. If you blow an amplifier, protect light kicks in, done deal, you know what's up. But hopefully this has helped you find your issue. If you're out there watching, if you have any tips or tricks, things you like to try, things I didn't cover, go ahead and put them in the comments. Let us know. Let's all learn from this experience. If you like what we're doing here, make sure and give us a thumbs up. Click that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. I'm still kind of new to this, and I'm checking out my analytics. I'm unsure how so many views are on the channel and nobody's subscribed. It seems like there's getting a lot of repetitive views from people, but just check that out for me. Make sure you're subscribed. Ring that bell for notifications. But let me know, guys. Let me know in the comments, how do you think I did? What do you think about these tips and tricks and this tech time, checking out how to troubleshoot your amplifier? Again, if you got anything you want to add, put it in the comments. And that's it. Until next time, we'll see y'all then.